welcome to this week's edition of the Scenic View podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Owens, Communications Director here at Scenic, State Employees Association of North Carolina for our new listeners. And I'm joined today by Executive Director Artis Watkins, Government Relations Director Suzanne Beasley, and podcast producer Sam Klein. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today is Thursday, April 10th. It's the start of the Masters, and that's what That's what I was paying attention to there earlier.
John's seasons are based on sporting events.
Mostly sports related. I keep thinking about the time that we were about to podcast and I had like Wimbledon on, and you were like, "Why are you watching Wimbledon?"
Sometimes it gets dire for John.
All the sports. All the sports.
Anyway, it's a beautiful day here in Raleigh. Maybe a little chill in the air. Is it supposed to be colder this weekend, or?
I think it's going to warm back up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was supposed to warm back up.
What happened? Because it was supposed to be cold like
It's
Tuesday,
April.
right? Yeah.
I think it's going to stay, though, kind of nice compared to what it was last week. Good yard work weather.
We've been in fake spring.
Yeah.
So.
As long as it gets warm enough for me to put my plants back outside, I'm okay.
Oh, yeah.
They all had to come back
more
inside
frost.
a week after I had just planted them all.
So we're stuck in this studio instead of outside in the sun, but we do have a fan now, so that's cool. We're going to talk about important issues for state employees and retirees, as we always do. As usual, we'll start with the legislature. Yesterday, the News and Observer reported that the Senate's budget proposal will be released next week.
Yeah, we're hearing Monday.
Monday? Well, that's pretty early in the week.
But generally, that's what happens. It comes down on Monday evening. You got to plow through it pretty quickly to get ready for votes. Don't have the specifics of what's in that bill, obviously, right now. But as soon as we do, we will push that information out to you guys. But yeah, Monday looks like the big day for the Senate proposal.
And from that story, I think it was in the Under the Dome section of the News and Observer, it said that they expected the votes by the end of the week.
Right.
So there'll be not much discussion on it.
Generally isn't. That's pretty much how it's gone the last, years. They release it on Monday. You better plow through it so you know what's in it. And then Wednesday and Thursday are usually votes.
And remember, they're saying they didn't take much issue with Governor Stein's budget that he put out. To recap, he proposed a 10% raise for teachers and admin folks like principals, but most people in the schools would get 2%. So your teaching assistants, folks who work in the cafeteria or school bus drivers, things like that would get 2%. So that's kind of a lot of people, that's misleading. They think everybody in the schools would be getting 10% if the legislature adopted Governor Stein's budget, but it's just teachers and principals. It looks like that's targeted towards. And then the rest of state government, he proposed the 2% and a one-time $1,000 bonus.
And I saw there's a story, I guess, yesterday, too, that the House and the Senate agreed on a spending limit. Is that correct? It's like $800 million.
Yes, the modern era thing is for them to get together and figure out a spending cap that they just agree amongst themselves. We're not going to go beyond. And, they've done that.
Whether they adhere to it or not. But as part of that story on the Senate budget coming out, it said that the DAVE Act would also be in the Senate's budget, or likely would be in it.
So, that's some chatter, too. If you guys remember, the DAVE Act is a piece of legislation that we've told you guys about, and it proposes that a division be set up within the State Auditor's office that would address government efficiency.
Specifically by looking at each agency to determine if, in their opinion, this division of the auditor's office thinks the agency's needed, but also any vacant positions to determine if they believe those vacant positions are needed.
And the act also includes something about the ability to use AI for that.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But otherwise doesn't lay out the parameters of how they determine if these positions are needed or not.
And plus, that division would require employees, so...
Yeah, be an allocation of money to have employees to do it. However, what I find most interesting about it is that a lot of legislators are saying, hey, look, we're not saying that whatever the auditor or his employees in this section, this DAVE section, whatever they come back to us and say to cut, we're not saying we will.
Mm-hmm.
We're just asking them to tell us. Now, how in the world would a legislator say, nah, y'all been studying it and you've used whatever metrics you've used, but I'm just going to decide I'm not voting with you without getting shellacked. So, of course, they're going to have to rubber stamp it, right? And so if they don't, the only thing you can do as the legislature is have your own nonpartisan professional staff, fiscal research, which have been there for decades doing this kind of work. when needed. Have them look at it. That would be a check and balance. That would let a legislator know they really agree. However, if you're doing that, that's duplicative and one might argue inefficient. You already have the nonpartisan professional staff of fiscal research, which has kind of always been considered an unparalleled staff of the legislature. And people have expected the legislature, they're appropriating the money to make sure that they should be the ones making sure by hauling agencies in to report to them, to answer the tough questions and provide the documentation to fiscal research. That's how it's always been done. So I find it strange that the defense of this is we're not saying we're going to do what they tell us to do. Well, if you don't, you're going to have to spend more money to run the same program somewhere else to know what to do. So it's just ironic at best.
So you just said that a nonpartisan, maybe apolitical group recommends things.
Traditionally, it has been very, very vital, and it has been the case that the fiscal research staff at the General Assembly is a nonpartisan professional staff that the public could rely upon to give advice to all legislators of either party, and they've behaved that way. That is what they've done.
So then turning this over to an obviously political...
Well, you have to run under some party to run for a statewide elected office.
So doesn't that seem to suggest that they want it to be political?
I mean, arguably, politics has to enter the room when you put it under a statewide elected office where somebody's got to run under some party's banner.
Yeah. It's just, do you think people in North Carolina, when they checked the box for the state auditor, they thought that he would have this much power or
No.
Like, is this a thing?
Well, I mean, he didn't until they passed legislation to...
Right.
I don't think anyone really knew what
yeah.
the state auditor did. So,
I mean, that's fair.
But no, I don't think anybody was expecting that the state auditor would be telling the legislature, here's the state agencies that you should keep, and here's the vacant positions that are supposed to provide public services that you need or don't need, and I used AI, so...
And also, how is AI going to tell them where?
Still don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm not saying you can't use AI. Maybe you can. But again, somebody would have to plug in some input in order to get anything out of AI. And we used the example last week. How many probation parole officers are you going to tell the AI you want per 100,000 or 250,000 North Carolinians?
You still need that human input.
mm-hmm. So State Auditor Beth Wood, when she was in office, she was almost seen as apolitical. She had friends on both sides.
Well, she made a big deal out of saying she needed to stay.
And it just seems like that one position would be less political than most of the others, because it's kind of like your umpire. You calling balls and strikes, right?
Well, it's really sensitive work they would be doing. Like this DAVE Act, and it did pass the Senate. And the Senate's pretty clear it's going to be part of their budget that's coming out next week. So the House is going to have to decide, do they want that in there? At the end of the day, the one thing we can all agree on, I say at the end of the day a lot, but anyway, the one thing we can all agree on, and we say this all the time in committee, there is not a soul who thinks it's a bad idea to look at every program we have. But I don't understand. It's almost like pretend now that we never had these legislative committees charged with doing that, and who in fact would meet and take testimony from agency employees and review documentation and make changes. I don't know. It's like we're acting like we need to rediscover fire.
Just seems to me that
we already have fire.
That's not a task you can enter into with an agenda and do it fairly.
Well, and I don't know what, if any, agenda Auditor Bullock or any auditor that follows him would have, but I can tell you this, you're just not going to have faith out of the public and certainly out of the employees in the same way that you would with the legislature, the legislative staff recommending, looking at these things and legislative committees hashing them out. But, we'll have to see how this plays out. There's always a shuffling of the deck a little bit in terms of what agency heads get in terms of powers. So who knows?
And just to bring it back full circle to members, why should members care about this? Why should members care about the DAVE Act?
So the main difference between the DAVE Act and any other DOGE effort is that it's only directing the auditor to look at agencies themselves as whether or not they're needed, and vacant positions as to whether or not they're needed. So it's not a government efficiency thing. It is literally about agencies and state employee jobs, and that's it, as though that's all there is in government spending. All the while, there are literally bills being filed this week that would appropriate money to non-governmental entities. So we're worried about efficiency, but we're going to suggest spending more money on non-governmental entities that there is nothing in the bill about how we will track that money, how the auditor's office will track that money. You'd have to add so many people to the auditor's office, first of all. I don't know how many they even plan to add.
I don't think they know at this point.
All the while, you have more bills giving more money to different groups. A couple million here, a couple million there. And then the auditor staff would need to look at all of that as well, obviously. But this DAVE Act is not a governmental efficiency effort. It's just looking at vacant positions, which we can't repeat it enough. The number of state positions has declined greatly, more than 20% in the last 15 years, while the population has increased by 16%. So it is not as though we are awash in state government positions, and that's our problem in terms of money. That is very hard to believe you're going to provide adequate services when you're that far behind the population growth and you think of cutting some of those vacant jobs.
And just to clarify, the DAVE Act, I guess it doesn't matter after Monday, but the DAVE Act is actually a Senate Bill 474.
One other thing. One of the things that I've found interesting is that, the state auditor noted he had a lot of vacancies in the auditor's office when he took office, and that he's filled a lot of those. And so that ability to fill them kind of led him to believe, just out of experience, that it must be that state government's just not working hard enough to fill these positions. That is definitely not what we've heard out of the agencies. Now, they get frustrated over the way we have to do hiring right now, but the Office of State Human Resources has a director in Stacey Myers who's told the legislature, I'm turning that on its head. We're going to make that a lot more efficient. So that concern is solved. But if you want to know why those positions are sitting vacant, if you go to that great fiscal research division we have at the General Assembly, go to their website. Go to the General Assembly's website, go to fiscal research, click on the documents. There's fascinating stuff there. And one of them shows that over a 10-year period, from January of 2014 until the end, December of 2023, so a 10-year period, the cumulative change in wage and salary income, not benefits, but wage and salary, for North Carolina citizens, so your basic North Carolinian, that was a 78.3% increase in their wage and salary over that 10-year period. For North Carolina state employees, 18.5% increase. That's why you have vacancies.
That's our whole point. Right?
That's the whole, and that comes from not our heads, not our hearts. It comes from data, hardcore facts that are on the Fiscal Research Division's part of the North Carolina General Assembly website. When you give 18.5% raises over a 10-year period and everybody else in North Carolina got 78.3% during that period, you're not competitive.
Hopefully that'll be fed into the large language model AI that does this work, the chat NCGTP.
That feels like a large bell just ringing in their face of ding, 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 here's your problem.
But so you just said that the auditor was saying that he didn't have as much problem filling roles. I'm sure it's a lot easier to hire an $80,000 auditor's position in Raleigh than it is, say, prison in Greene County or something,
Yeah. But even they would struggle. I think they need to be paid more as well, because I know the professional positions are extraordinarily difficult. You cannot compete. The benefits were supposed to make up for that. And of course, everybody wants to keep chipping away at the benefits. The health plan is going to go up this year without question in terms of cost for the members. The dependent care coverage in the health plan remains out of reach, and the retirement.
Yeah, you no longer get the health care after you retire either. So that started in 21.
In 21, they took that away.
And it's steady chipping away.
Yeah. So you cannot offer 50% less, which is what that is, the difference between those. Even, oh, whoops. See, I do need some AI. It's 60%. It's a 60% difference. That's crazy. But I'm just an English major.
You're a lawyer, so.
Yeah, they can't count any better than an English major.
So another bill pertaining to the state auditor had some interest this week. It was House Bill 549. several parts to the bill, but one particular part would change the amount of employees at the auditor's office that fall under the SHRA protections.
Yeah, it actually would make all of the employees of the auditor's office exempt from the SHRA, the State Human Resources Act. So it would pull all those employees out from under those protections that the act was created for. So yeah, that's problematic.
An artist was saying, I think I overheard you saying that that's kind of a slippery slope, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it happens to one, it'll keep happening.
Oh, yeah. I mean, who doesn't want the ability to just hire the folks they want instead of the folks they've got? But that's why it's government. You have protections for government employees so that things that happened for decades and decades no longer happen. And the deal is, you never know who's going to come along that would take advantage of it. I doubt we have anybody that's been elected to office or appointed to office to head up these agencies who would require loyalty or require people to keep quiet about something they should not. I don't think we have that at all, but you never know when you could.
Yeah.
The way you keep from ever having that problem is to have the openness and transparency and protection so that employees are willing to come forward. And especially in this era of wanting efficiency and to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse, you have to empower employees to be able to come forward and report it. This would actually suppress anybody's willingness to do that because their livelihood could be shut off by coming forward to do the right thing for the public.
Yeah.
And state employees want to do the right thing. And state employees are already kind of standoffish. They don't want to come right out and say things, which is why we hear from them, because we can go have those conversations that an employee may not feel comfortable having about any number of situations within an agency. So
it's just kind of ironic that I've always seen the SHRA as being apolitical. Like, that's the reason it exists. Right?
It is, because
you
used to be able to require your employees, if you wanted to go put political signs in people's yards or at intersections. You could do that back in the day. Prior to some of the pieces of the SHRA. It was crazy. I mean, everything, it was the Wild West in state government back in the day. And so over time, these protections have been put in place for the public and for the employees. But really, at the end of the day, the public is the ones that should want their tax dollars to pay for salaries of people who are beholden to them and no one else, and not worried about anybody but the taxpayer. Or if they're not doing their job, that's a whole other issue. And this SHRA lays out responsibilities for state employees as well. So if you're not doing your job, it is, contrary to popular belief, absolutely doable to fire somebody in state government. You'll hear, oh, you can't fire a state employee. Yeah, you can. You just have to document.
Yeah.
It has to be done correctly.
And it's a continuity of government type thing, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Like,
politicians come and go, but the public services and the people who know how to do them, that's been the backbone of our government.
So where does that bill stand now, and what goes from here?
That bill did pass the J1 committee. It'll go to state and local government next. And then I don't think it has a referral pass there. I guess it would go to the House floor. Now, we asked a lot of questions in committee that day because there's that's why we're here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknown in that. Why, for instance? Why would you take an entire agency and take away their rights? And two things can be true at one time. We think it would be ridiculous to take away those State Human Resources Act rights from folks in purely admin positions, clerical type positions, for instance. Why in the world do you need people who serve at the pleasure of the agency head? You do not. The only thing traditionally you've needed those exempt positions for is people who have very sensitive managerial policy-making decisions. But, on the other hand, like, let's take these new DAVE Act positions, for example. Should they be SHRA? They wouldn't be doing clerical type work. They would be doing auditing. It would be auditing, but it would be a different kind of auditing than just financial records. They'd be making recommendations. Is that managerial or policy making in the way the State Human Resources Act has defined it traditionally? No. Again, two things can be true. You've got people who are doing clerical type work, and then you've got people who are doing routine professional work.
Yeah.
Those people don't need to be exempt for a much more important reason. They are the ones looking at this information to determine if we should keep agencies that serve the public or people that serve the public. And my goodness, I can't think of anything that needs to be less political than the people doing that. They need to know they should feel free to come forward and say, actually, that's not what I saw when we looked at the information.
Yeah. But and like we have an auditor here at Scenic. What if we were able to? We pick the people who
Right. Instead of hiring outside. Yeah.
Impartial.
Yeah. And I'm still not clear. Well, that's a whole other issue. But
Yeah.
yeah.
We could talk about this all day long.
You need somebody outside and impartial to be doing this work.
Yeah.
But how can you be deemed impartial, even if you technically are? If nobody leans on you in any way, if you're not protected by those SHRA rights, anyone could say these people are political appointees at the end of the day. They're not nonpartisan protected people. And you don't want that.
Yeah.
Or else nobody will have any faith in the decisions made and offered to the General Assembly as recommendations. That's kind of futile.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely in the thick of the fights down there, huh? And you
We are.
So I got a question for you. So this week I created a page for our bills that we're tracking, right? And it was so many bills.
It is.
So you can go to our website and under advocacy, you can go to bill tracking and see all the bills that we're tracking. But I tried to categorize them into issues.
It was good.
And it was so hard. So my question is, how do y'all do it? Like, you have to be the only lobbyist down there that have this many issues to cover.
So what happens is, the flurry of bill filing starts. And so you just have to every single day, and we tried to do this throughout the day, keep up with what bill's being filed. And if it even remotely could involve our people, you just go ahead and put it on the list, then you go back your bill. So yeah, and folks, if you look at that list, those are things that we're keeping our eye on. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of those bills will actually make it to the floor.
Or that we support or oppose.
Yeah, we may not have a position on specific things, but it's important to track it just to stay up on what's going on, in the minds of legislators, and what we may possibly need to work towards going forward. But yeah, it's a lot of bills, but interesting reading.
Yeah, I think I told y'all that I cheated at the end and just created a category called miscellaneous and just stuck a bunch of them in there.
Oh,
it was great though.
We've always said that too. There are some things that are just miscellaneous,
like the state cookie is on there. It feels important.
What's the one
we did have a discussion about it?
There was a weird one. Oh, the state TV show, Andy Griffith. Did y'all see that, Bill?
I did see that.
That shows.
That makes
North
sense.
Carolina, yeah.
But I couldn't think of any other show from North Carolina.
One Tree Hill.
Oh yeah, Dawson's Creek.
I hate.
But
that.
those were like
I hate that kind of bill. Just hate it.
The Andy Griffith show is definitely the most classic out of those.
Yeah, and it is like those are kind of nondescript areas. Like, I guess Outer Banks. Hey, what about the Outer Banks contingent?
I would love that to be a show, but they didn't film here. They filmed in Charleston.
That's true, but it's supposed to be here. Well, they didn't film Andy Griffith here. They filmed it in.
They thought there was a ferry or a bridge from the Outer Banks to Chapel Hill.
A ferry to Chapel Hill from Outer Banks.
So they don't count.
Which I think is hilarious because half of the cast is from North Carolina. And I was like, no one's going to tell the director that that's not.
Yeah. The director's from Chapel Hill. Like,
and no one's going.
Or Durham or one of them, yeah.
And he said ferry.
We're on a tangent.
We digress.
We'll have our own separate podcast, Sam, on pop culture in North Carolina. How about
I would love that.
I would listen.
You can be on it too.
We can talk about Taylor Swift.
Yay.
So speaking of fun, let's go to John's Wacky Weird Question of the Week.
John's Wacky Weird Question of the Week.
Yay. So it's theme park season here at Scenic. For about 40 years now, we've sold theme park tickets at a discount to our members, and it's a big undertaking for us, but it's also a very popular program. Up until recently, they were sold through the credit union's branches, but now everything is online.
Since COVID, yeah.
So everything's moved to online, so you can come to our website, scenic.org/theme parks, and you can check out all of our offerings. I think we have 5 or 6 parks on there now, and we're still adding some as the promo codes are sent to us. But yeah, we have it up and running. I think last year we talked about your favorite theme park. That was our question of the week, 1 week. So this year I'm going to do, what is your favorite thing to do at the theme parks? Anyone want to start?
I'll go.
Okay.
I like the rides. I don't like roller coasters that much. If I'm going to Disney World, yes, I will ride every single one that my family rides because I don't want to go to Disney World and miss out on any roller coasters. But I like the fun little rides that they... like the Peter Pan ride. And
that's exactly what I thought about.
I'm actually not a big teacups person because my family never liked it growing up because all of them get motion sickness spinning around.
We like the Dumbo one at Disney World, but
I like going on It's a Small World just because it's funny to watch my parents get irritated.
Wait, your dad, like Rambo, gets motion sickness?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's bad.
That's hysterical.
It's really bad. We go on a boat and me and him both have to get prescription medication.
So all the enemy
For a
really
cruise.
needed to do was spin him around a couple of times.
Probably.
We made Cameron, my stepson, he's now in college, but when he was like 11 or 12, we went to Disney World and we made him wait in line at It's a Small World. And it was like a 2-hour line. And we were like, oh, it's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. It's going to be so cool. When we got in there, he was so mad.
It's such a long
so
line
boring.
for such a ridiculously boring ride. But
Yeah.
it's an experience you have to do.
I like these.
No, you don't.
So my answer is, I guess, I like the water rides, especially the one that like goes up and then just goes right back down. into the
We used to
water.
call those a bamboo shoot. Yeah, log flume.
Yeah.
Ironically, that was, and I don't know why, as a child, we grew up going to Six Flags. And that was my mother's favorite ride. And we were children, so she couldn't just leave us to go ride the ride. So they would tell us it was the only way to get out of the park.
Oh, okay.
I did not. I still don't care for the log flume.
My mom always made us do the water rides at the end,
Yeah,
like before we
so
left.
you're not walking around
Yeah.
sopping
Yeah.
wet.
Well, they have those cool dryer things now.
Yeah.
I don't think they did back then. But back in the day, I haven't been to a theme park in a long time. Maybe that'll change since I got grandkids. But roller coasters were my thing. I loved a good roller coaster.
Yeah. So that's yours. Well, Disney World doesn't have a lot of roller coasters, by the way.
They have good roller coasters, but they don't have a lot, which is why I'm okay with going on every roller coaster
Yeah.
my family goes on there because there's not that many.
But Busch Gardens has way more. They do have awesome rides there, but what about you, Artis?
I like the roller coasters as well. And then at King's Dominion, they have something, the drop zone.
Okay.
I love that.
No.
You know, where you just go up, you're all on a big, like on the exterior of a circle, and the circle goes up, and then that, you know, when you least expect it, they drop. I like anything that drops you when you.
I rode that at Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri. It scared the crap out of me. I will never get
The dropping doesn't scare me, but what did scare me, we were there one time, and we always go when it's hotter than blazes,
Mhm.
and it went up. It's like 4 p.m, so that sun is coming, that late afternoon
yeah.
sun, and beating on those people, and it got stuck up there at the top.
Oh.
No.
Now that, yeah, with your legs dangling and the sun's beating down on you, and it's August, and no, thank you.
I know so many people love roller coasters because of that feeling in their gut whenever
Mhm.
they feel the drop. That is the thing that I don't like about roller coasters.
Yeah.
Because everyone else takes it as like it's a fun feeling, exciting, exhilarating. And I'm like, my body is saying I'm going to die because we're about to go straight down. We
It's
need
like-
to stop.
It's
It's
the
like
wind.
weightlessness, right?
Yeah.
The wind for me.
No one said food. I guess I can't really think of any.
It's so expensive.
It is
Yeah.
very expensive. I guess the Dole Whip at
Always
Disney
worth it.
World is the
Always
one
worth it.
food I would probably think
Dole
about.
Whip.
I don't really remember anything
That's like,
super
If you get the
exciting
chance,
food.
John, you got to go to the Dole Plantation and get some Dole Whip there. It's amazing.
yeah, that would be cool.
It's also really cool to see how pineapple grows. It grows on like a bush.
So
It's not like a tree. It's
the
like
Dole
a
Whip
tiny
is,
little bush.
I think it's what, vanilla ice cream with in pineapple juice. Is that what it is?
It's like a pineapple whipped gelato.
sounds like it would be with
frozen
Cool Whip.
yogurt.
It's really good.
It sounds delicious.
Yeah,
Really good.
refreshing.
That's the only theme park food I can really think of. Carowinds used to have the bubblegum ice cream on Snoopy Island.
Oh, goodness.
Well, that's our show this week. Just a little drop in to update everyone. And stay tuned for the scoop in the Senate's budget next week. And next week, we'll probably have a jam-packed episode.
I'm certain.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.